All right, everyone, it's 12:02, so I think we should get started. You're all here on time, so thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. It's great to see everyone. I think I know some of you, but not all of you. There's a lot of new names here that I don't know. My name is Brooks Winchell. I'm the director of the Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. And this is our Fall Faculty Planning Day, which is really going to center around the theme of engaging students. And I want to give a special thanks before we start to Dr. Tracy McLaughlin and Dr. Mike Maripodi for helping to design this, and also for all the faculty who helped with the input on this day. They really helped to shape this day. So really special thanks to Geeta Warner, Rebecca Heimel, Barbara Reed, Andrew Benowicz, sorry if I spelled that wrong, Linda Karamoto, Paul White, Rosemary Romano, and Chris Weir for helping to facilitate some of our conversations today. So great to see you all. We're going to get started with a couple remarks from our new Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, Steve Haley, who I believe is on. Steve, are you on there?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you. Thanks for joining. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I want to add a person that I feel grateful to, and that's Brooks Winchell, because he was the one who is coordinating the work of all the folks that he mentioned. So thank you, Brooks. He also gave me like my prepared remarks, and so I'm in his debt for that. I'll try to follow the agenda you put down because I thought it was a good one. And he encouraged me to share a little bit about myself, because he said there may be some on here who have yet to meet you. And I was anxiously scanning the screen to make sure that was true, because I don't want the rest of you to think this person never stops talking about himself. So I did find some folks that I've yet to meet. I do want to meet you in person. I'd like to engage you. I'd like to be engaged by you. I love higher education because it's an engaging enterprise. So I better put something about myself in three sentences. My background: I'm a small town boy from central Pennsylvania. Grew up in an area where the trades were paramount. My family, my dad especially, strongly encouraged me to become an electrician like he was. I became one, and I was doing it. The economy faltered. I started a small business myself and was doing that. And I faltered at it because it didn't give me the range of meanings that I was somehow clamoring for. And I knew nothing about what they were. I just knew that I didn't want to do that. And I have no qualms about people being an electrician. It's a good vocation to have. It just wasn't mine. And so I had a little bit of time to spend with a leader in that town. And he was a pastor of a small church that I happened to go to because my family made me do that. And I'll tell you about that at greater length sometime if we're drinking a beer or something like that, not just now. So even though I was filled with resentment to be taken to this enterprise called the Christian church, I did find this leader of this church compelling because he knew stuff I didn't. And he spoke in ways that I could not. And he had a vision for me that I didn't have except inarticulately in myself. So I asked if I could talk to him once, and he agreed to it. And before I left the office, he made a call to this small college in Quincy, Eastern Nazarene College. And I don't know, he seemed to apply for me. I mean, and this was in August of a year, and at the end of August that year, I was at that college, and I didn't have preparation for it. I hadn't taken the SAT. My high school record was one that wouldn't have predicted success. So my roots like that is, even though Eastern Nazarene College didn't quite have the same access mission, my access there was an access mission. I guess I found there what matters to me still. That's why I stayed in higher education. It was a place of magic because it engaged me in all these things that were out of my capacities that I didn't know about. It was whether from Greek philosophy or ancient history or languages, music, culture. And there was no condescension there. It was just given to me as an amazing treasure. And it blew my mind, changed my life. It gave me something that I could take my 18 and 19 and 20-year-old anxieties and give it a name. You know, I remember, still remember, practically laughing at myself the first time I used the phrase existentialism. I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't, but I knew I either was one or had the affliction or something. I mean, it was what it was. It was a world. It was an access. It was a passport. It was a passport into meaning and transformation and love and joy and hate and all those things. It was the ability to be given philosophical language or psychological language, Sigmund Freud or Friedrich Nietzsche, and finally understand why I hated the religion of my upbringing so much, even though I was at a school sponsored by it. It gave me concepts and ideas. I still spend part of every day thinking about them because I am a religionist now by trade. It's my academic discipline. I'll tell you, I'm an administrator by calling as well, by vocation, if you hear a little religious resonance there. Don't overinterpret it. I just mean it's what I do, and I do it out of a sense of meaning and purpose. But I'm a scholar of religion. It's what I spend my deeper mental life on. And because that period of my life and the engagement of it was like, you know, going to the gasoline station and putting fuel in your car, and somehow the tank never runs empty so long as you hit it once in a while. Or I see people that are courageous enough now to be driving Teslas, and I admire it, because when the battery runs out, you better be within, you know, a plugging distance of getting recharged. Somehow that's what college is. I mean, you got that charge if it took, and you can recharge it along the way, right? I still read these things I was referring to. I still remember the times I was with faculty members where they helped me, but where they corrected me, where they changed my less than totally articulate expression into a better sentence. I got better at that. And if you've read my emails, you'll know I'm still not perfect at it. But I took it from them then, because they cared for me and they engaged me on every channel. So Brooks gave a third topic, and I'm out of time. So I'll just say a sentence or two about it. And that's the theme of today, which is engagement. And I'm not going to act like I can show you all how to engage students. I know you already know how. And I know also that, like me, you rely on people like Brooks and Tracy and others who spend their lives developing data that points the way into new practices and methods. I know, like me, you are courageous in your reinvention of your approach, as generations keep changing, expectations for learning keep changing, and you travel that journey with your students. I know you do that because I know the work of our students here, and it's about student success. Our Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching is something you all use and keep using it. But let's keep relying on that. That's why we're here doing it. It's about that magical process of engaging students. I want to sit with you some today. I can't be here the whole time. But Brooks, thank you for the invitation. And thank you for the prepared remarks. I hope I acquitted myself well to your sense of it. I appreciate it.
That was perfect. Thanks so much, Steve, for welcoming everybody and getting us started. So this isn't going to be, we're not going to be talking the entire time. We're really going to make most of this day about you all and engaging in discussions. So that's why we're calling it a community of practice. And the faculty that I worked with to design this day really helped me to see the importance of that and the value inherent in that. So We're going to move into our first discussion. I'm going to have Dr. Tracy McLaughlin sort of introduce us to the idea and give us a little bit of background and some key questions that you can consider when we move into our first breakout room. We'll also have in the breakout room some facilitators who will help to keep the conversation going. So Tracy, Dr. McLaughlin.
Yes, hello. Welcome everyone to Faculty Planning Day. We're so pleased that so many of you were able to join us. Last time I checked, we had 45, but I'm hearing more people clicking on. So this it's really great to see so many of us joining us. As you've heard, as Brooks has indicated, we are meeting today to have a conversation about how to best engage our students. Student engagement has become such a critical focus for many of you since we've been forced to provide so much of our instruction remotely over the last year and a half. But I've been fascinated by this topic for some time. I recently encountered some research that speaks to the importance of student friendships. I was fascinated by that as a precondition for optimal learning. It turns out that some students learn a lot better when they feel supported by and have trusted relationships with peers in the classroom. And I thought, that's such a great topic perhaps to keep in mind for our discussion today. The entire event has been organized to allow as much time as possible for dialogue and exchange between all of you. We will begin with a 30-minute small group discussion on how best to engage our students. And each of those small group discussions will be facilitated by one of our faculty facilitators. We have a great group of volunteers. I will just name them really quickly because they really deserve our applause here. So we have Rita Verna, Rebecca Heimel, Andrew Banasevich, Linda Kuramoto, Paul White, Rosemary Romano, Christopher Weir, Mike Marapodi, and I think Brooks will be facilitating as well. So thank you in advance for volunteering to do that. We're really grateful. So groups will get together and discuss strategy that works to engage students and how students perhaps become disengaged. Because we are all here to learn from one another, we would like you to share openly not only the things that have worked, but also strategies that may have backfired on you. You may want to think about whether you're engaging all students equally, and if not, what strategies may help do that better in the future. Then in the second breakout session, our conversation will focus on how we can develop and sustain a community of practice. You may want to think about the kinds of conversations you want to engage in going forward and how we can maintain these conversations. Of course, after each of these breakout sessions, we will come together to report to the larger group. And then finally, at the end of the meeting at 2:00, we have an optional Canvas overview provided by Brooks Winchell. We encourage all of you to attend. So now, without further ado, and to allow as much time as possible for conversation between all of you, I'm handing this back over to Brooks and our faculty facilitators, and all of you, of course. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks, Tracy. So that's kind of the idea for the breakout room. So we're going to move into our first kind of breakout room session. It'll be about 30 minutes that we'll have, and each breakout room will have a facilitator. I'm not going to mention everybody who's in each breakout room, but I will say in breakout room 1, we have Chris Weir will be facilitating that one. Breakout room group 2, we'll have Rosemary Romano facilitating. In breakout room 3, we'll have Rebecca Heimel facilitating. In room 4, we'll have Paul White. Room 5, we'll have Andrew Bananowitz. I'm sorry, Andrew. I'm really sorry. And in breakout room 8, we have Peter Warner, who will be facilitating that room. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the rooms so you can join, and we'll have about a half an hour, so we can be back here roughly 12:45, 12:50. So I'm going to encourage you all to sort of share best practices that you found from engaging students, either remotely or in person if you're teaching in person, or online. Hopefully you have a great discussion, and we'll bring it back, and we'll look forward to hearing from everybody when you return. So here I go. I'll open up the breakout room, so you should be able to join. Well, welcome back, everybody. It's about 1:00 now. So Yeah, thank you all for coming back, and nice little chat over the break here with John and John. Yeah, so thanks everybody. So before we left on the break, you had joined some breakout rooms and you're all having a conversation. And I think there was a couple of key questions that we had given you and that I think the facilitators were really focusing on. And it was really about, what works for you in engaging students? Like what's one strategy or what are some of your best strategies for keeping your students engaged in class? And engagement can mean so many different types of things, and so hopefully you had a lot of conversations that went in different directions. So another central sort of question I think that you may have talked a little bit about is like, what happens when students are disengaged, or what kinds of things disengage students, and how can we avoid those kinds of things in class? So I'm just going to open it up and see if there's anybody who wants to share what their group had talked about. Could be the people who helped facilitate the conversation or anybody from one of the groups. So does anybody feel like volunteering what you talked a little bit about?
I'll start out, Brooks, if it's okay.
Sure. Who's that? Chris?
That's Chris.
Yeah, Chris. So Chris, you were in room 1 with Carol Pepe, Christy Reynolds, Joe Miglio, Nadine Fowler.
Indeed.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what you talked about.
I guess one of the important things that came out, and there were some key words here that were important to everybody in terms of what makes engagement work. And they are group work, collaboration, and peer-to-peer. And I was really taken by that because it stresses so much about how students have to work with other students in order to form the kind of community that we're talking about when we say a learning community. And this came up time and time again. What did not come up immediately, but only later, was the teacher to student kind of collaboration and the issues that can get in the way here, such as trust. And that becomes very important because too often the instructor is seen really as the authority figure, the one who hands out grades, and you have to be kind of leery about so that that collaboration is really second to the peer-to-peer. And the other thing that fascinated me, and I hadn't thought about right off the bat, was the whole input of culture, the diverse cultures that can exist in a classroom, whether it be on ground or on Zoom or in an LMS. And that can hinder and take some time really to get to the full collaborative nature that you want to have in an effective learning community.
Those were some great points, Chris. So can you explain a little bit more that last part? You said there's the diversity of the classrooms can get in the way of the collaboration.
Well, it can slow it down. I shouldn't use get in the way, but
maybe you didn't. I did.
Barrier to effective collaboration and peer-to-peer critiquing. And it's something that has to, to be overcome because there are differences in culture, the European versus the American versus the Asian that govern what you do in a classroom.
Interesting idea. Yeah, that's great. And so your group was sort of seeing peer-to-peer collaboration as being primary and teacher-to-peer sort of more secondary.
It certainly came out a lot around that, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And so how does that play out? Like what sorts of activities do the people in your group do to help facilitate the peer-to-peer discussions? Like, or anybody else can jump in on
Well,
that.
you have to put together projects that involve group collaboration and discussion. Interestingly, there, because I did bring up the fact that group work where everybody gets the same, the students really detest, they hate that. And the group work has to be non-graded or if it's possible to have the student grade not only him or herself but also critique those who do not participate. And that can be difficult to get students to do. And that in part is where culture comes in.
Yeah, good set of observations there. That's been my experience too. Group work, I think students are sort of hit or miss on sometimes. I don't know if other people have that experience. Does anybody have any strategies that work really well for group work that they want to share?
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, just said.
Thank you. Our team, I think there are a lot of outstanding ideas. One of them is the importance of relevance to connect the lesson plan, the learning objectives to life. Students questions about job markets, about the business news. Like for this week, for example, one of the big titles is global warming. Like for instance, in my class this morning, this is the thing about global warming. What do you think? The cost of global warming, but also the opportunity cost. And let's think about this as an economist beyond political views. I mean, what's behind this scientific debate? Is there consensus? So I think for students to start really thinking about the topic in a way, how this is connected to this as a customer, as a citizen, I think is important. The other aspects in regards to projects, I think that one of the key tools is, for instance, to use Google Share as a facilitator or the course facilitator to monitor the progress of teams. Because if I deliver at the beginning of the semester, here is the topic, these are the guidelines. I think if the instructor has time, because sometimes it can be challenging if the size is big, but the bottom line is of students is to monitor the progress and for students to see that there is a feedback, there is a periodic feedback to Google Share, for instance. I think that's a strategy that can work. And again, a project it should also be connected about a case study, something that the students can learn from it by the end of the day, to make them understand it's not just about knowledge, but about competencies, about decision making. I think that's very important. So, last but not least is I think that sometimes stress can be challenging. And what I mean by stress, for graduate students, the students is in college, is learning, but things happen in life, like for example, losing a job and they're thinking about mortgage. And how can we work with that student to stay engaged in terms of deadline extension? And this is when psychology, I think John was talking about psychology, I said the break, and for how we kind of switch from our role as focused on business or finance to, like, I would say, this effective facilitation to try to understand, to express to the student that I am here for you, let's work together, you're going to make things happen. I think that is stress management.
Thank you, Sid. That's some good observations there about, especially in group work, helping to, monitor what they're doing is really important, I think. I see Nadine has her hand up. I'm going to take a question from Nadine, and then we'll move on to another group. Yeah.
Hi,
Sure.
Thank you. I'm Nadine Fowler out of Cambridge College in Lawrence. And I just wanted to add in thinking about how to engage students in group practices, that an effective strategy my students have provided feedback on that they loved and really helped to build community via Zoom is the simple act of playing a group game, something like a formative assessment we can use as instructors that helps us know where they are, what they're learning, what we might need to reinforce with them, but also helps them to build community, helps them to feel connected, and helps them to engage with the material in more of a fun way. So I use a website called Kahoot, but there are many sites like it. And every time I use it, I get a lot of positive feedback that the students feel more connected to the material, they understand it a little better, but it also helps for them to understand what they're doing in their group, right? And in their group community. I usually spend the first class breaking them out into small groups, and then they stay with that group throughout the time in my class so that they're able to kind of build that virtual community. And I think that that's a big piece that students have said that they feel like they're missing in this Zoom age, is that just ability to talk, connect, chat, collaborate. So through that time in that small group, they're able to do that and also able to engage with the material. And then it helps me as an instructor because I'm provided with a report through Kahoot that lets me know who chose what, who might be struggling with a certain topic. And it lets me know kind of as we go how I can tailor the content to make sure that I'm reaching all of our students.
Great,
Thank you.
excellent concrete suggestion there. I really like that. Kahoot I've used in the past too. It is really good. There's another one that I use called Slido, very similar
Yes.
polling app. Yeah, Slido.
Yeah, that's a great one too.
It's good.
Brooks, I just want to add that Nadine is in SOPC in Lawrence.
And new, right, Nadine? I think we've been.
Yes, I knew. But when she said Cambridge College, I thought I just want to underline it's also SOPC.
Yes,
Excellent.
thank you, Niti. Yes,
Great.
SOPC representing.
Yes.
Welcome, Nadine.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody. I feel the warm welcome. Thank you all.
Great, thanks. And I see Paul's got his hand up. Speaking of SOPC representation, Paul White is also from SOPC. Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about your group? Is that?
Yes, I was
Sure.
just gonna also share a little bit about the group that had that I've met with, and similar to what's been shared. Some of the discussion was about some of the things that not worked, such as the 45-minute PowerPoint videos that I record that may not work as well for my asynchronous students that are non-Emmy award winning, and ideas such as using a scavenger hunt for them to find information in libraries instead. Another great idea I think that was suggested and shared came from Doris, which was that she uses some protocols and she shared a resource for them. And I actually just brought one up quickly from what she had shared, and it was this just idea of called a block party protocol that was like a pretext reading that involved index cards. So it's obviously somewhat designed to be used in person, but it can be certainly converted to be used in an online format. And I think what she was sharing was that the structure can really, it can really help to also engage where you might have students that are less likely, less vocal, and some students that are more vocal. This particular exercise where students have index cards that they're all sort of reflecting on encourages participation from everyone. I think everyone shared that breakout rooms are particularly effective in sort of fostering conversation. I know for myself, I've experienced that where as a large group, I might not get as much discussion, but once I open up breakout rooms and I start going around to the breakout rooms, the discussion is lively and vivid. And also just paying it, using some attending skills, paying attention to the body language that students are expressing on Zoom, if you're on Zoom, and then paying attention to that and checking in with students as that's happening and making sure that that's there. And then I think a lot of this does speak to using universal design, which had been shared. So those were some of the ideas that I think had been raised that really speak to what's been shared so far.
Great, some excellent ideas in there, especially about the breakout rooms. Have you found an easy way to get into a breakout room without feeling awkward? No,
I'm still waiting for Zoom to add like the announcement button that just says that, the professor, Paul White is joining your breakout room, and without all of a sudden, it's just me being there. Sometimes I announce it, and I don't like to do that either because it then interrupts the conversation, and it's kind of like, you're all of a sudden the third wheel in the conversation, right? You're just showing up on, hey, I'm here. Stop talking, and the conversation sort of slows down.
Yeah, good point. And so, Doris, was there a name for that exercise, or was it an app or an exercise that?
It's a resource with a variety of protocols that can be differentiated based on what you're teaching. So I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
The link to this resource. They're all free.
Great, thanks. Cool. And I see we've got Linda coming in, and Barbara Reed also has her hand up. So I think, Barbara, you had your hand up first. Why don't we go to you, and then we'll go to Linda after.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say, we had a great group, and we had we had Aniti, Daniel, Paula, Christine, and myself. And I want to just say something in particular that, Daniel, I hope you don't mind, I'm putting you on the line here. But I thought he made such a great point. It's like we need to think about interaction at 3 different levels: student to student, student to professor, and student to the material, whatever the material is. And I thought that really had me really thinking as we were talking. But I think the other thing is, and Daniel, I'm going to ask if you would share, because he had some great community building activities that really work to bring people together so that they are actively building community. And I love the comment that was just made about the relevance and finding creative ways that we can do this with students so that they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel cared about. And I love what you were just sharing, Nadine, about that Kahoot, that you can actually get them engaged while you're assessing. I just love that. And I'm just really grateful that we've had this opportunity to have this discussion, because I think it's been incredibly rich. And I think that this is something that hopefully will continue, because so many people have so many great ideas.
Yeah, so far I've heard a lot of great ideas. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and I like the idea of student to student, student to professor, student to material as being kind of 3 different ways that we engage students. Thanks for sharing that, Barbara. Linda, do you want to tell us a little bit about what your group discussed?
So this group was represented by Kate Corbett, Laura Henderson, Joe Reed, Marianne Joseph, and Saeed Maki. And I wanted to expand a little bit upon a topic that was initially presented, meaning that we have a highly diverse student body. And there were a couple of comments in particular that really spoke to that rose in our group. And that is participation varies. And that especially if you've got a student who's an English as a second language, communicator, then, setting the expectation from the very beginning that everybody participates differently, and that that may mean that group assignments may not necessarily be divided equally, but based upon where the contributions are best met. The whole topic around cameras on, cameras off was a major topic in our group. And it was very elegant, but very good suggestion. And that was to just name this at the very beginning and impress upon the importance of visibility and the reasons for it. And in this case here, I believe it was Marianne who was mentioning that by doing this from the very beginning, you end up finding that you have a higher level of participation and cooperation than if you just left it to policies and procedures. Those were 2 key things that I think really spoke to leveraging the diverse population that we serve.
No, that was great. Some really good comments there. And so the cameras on, cameras off, I've had several conversations with faculty about, and this seems to be a really controversial area. So I'm not sure, how people feel about cameras on or cameras off. If anybody has a strong opinion one way or another, it'd be interesting to hear. Another thing that might be interesting to do is if you open the participants one, or actually if you open your reactions bar, maybe we could just take a quick poll around with either use the green check yes or the red X no. How many people require video when they're teaching on Zoom?
Brooks, can I just clarify something?
Yeah.
There's the same discussion in our group, but to mitigate some of the difficulties associated with being on Zoom, being off Zoom, that was the reason why, to specify at the very beginning, why it's important. So there was acknowledgement of the policy, but it was helping the students to be encouraged to participate and to be able to cite the reasons for why this would be beneficial for everybody. So I can't respond to that question, mainly because I think that point was really an excellent one.
That is an excellent point. And sort of explaining to the students, up front on day one, what the expectations for video are and why those expectations are there.
One of the things, Brooks and everyone that has worked well for me with regard to the camera question has been to just express my own sort of need as a teacher and saying, it's really important for me to be able to gauge how I am delivering things. Because if I can't see you, I don't know how you're receiving this. So much of what we do as teachers depends on reading faces, reading reactions, reading body language. And if you don't give us that, it's like we are musicians playing to an empty room. We don't have the audience to gauge how we should be playing this. So I just say for my own benefit, could you help me with this? Because it will make me better at doing what I'm doing for you. So that seems to have helped a little bit with giving them some understanding as to why I need it.
James, that's exactly what I do. I tell them, look at it from my point of view, rather than talk about what's required and what's a policy. And yeah, that's one of the explanations I give them why it's a good idea to have a camera on. But again, I don't require it. I tell them up front, it's college policy not to require cameras. But here are the reasons why it would be great if you could turn on your cameras at least most of the time. Taking breaks when you need to for, whatever reasons.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Good suggestion.
I think too that we need to have sensitivity to the circumstances of the student and trust the student's own judgment and comfort level. I request it, I don't require it, because there are students that may be somewhat embarrassed to have 20 people or 15 people, viewing their home. I remember one student who the only place that she could be away from the children would be to go into the bathroom and shut the door. And there was a bra hanging on the back of the door, through the whole class. But I think for some students, it's the comfort level, and it's just difficult for them to feel comfortable with other people in the class, seeing how they're dressed, what the circumstances of the house might be at that particular time, whether the kids are running back and forth while they're speaking. So I think we just have to, request it, explain why, as both Nadine and James have said, why it is helpful, and then trust that the student will make the best decision for them.
Well, but at the same time, though, when we're trying to explain concepts that are challenging, and when the student has, all sorts of noise in the background and all sorts of other disruptions, and the student shuts off the camera and the microphone, and we don't know that the student isn't paying attention, and then we get into this loop of perpetual, I don't understand, and we're unable to keep moving forward in terms of the learning progression. Well, that becomes a problem too. And I mean, personally, I would think that with the proliferation of those sort of, put whatever picture you want in the background and no one is seeing anything but you. I mean, I think what's the circumstances of someone's dwelling don't have to be on camera, is my point. But
there are backgrounds. They don't work for everybody, but they do work for a lot of people. So that is a nice alternative to having the space. So great conversation. I think we could carry on this for a while. I think there's a lot of people who have very strong views about whether or not to use camera. I know that Gita had raised her hand. Gita, did you want to tell us a little bit about what your group discussed?
Well, I'm actually struggling with this issue about the cameras because I do believe in the equity of it. And I'm seeing both what Andrew is seeing and what Carol is seeing. So one thing I ask is that, of course, people can take breaks away from the camera, but that people try to have them on. But if they are too shy to be on camera, they can turn it towards the ceiling. But I am also seeing what Andrew is describing, that there are consistently a few people who claim to be confused, they're not getting it, but it's always the people who are never on camera. And other students, frankly, get frustrated. Never mind about my level of frustration. I get paid to do this, right? But the other students actually feel that it's not equal what goes on in the classroom. So I think we also need to think of equity in that sense. Because we talked about, we didn't get to talk about this in our group, but do we treat students equally in terms of engagement? And as much as I tend to think that I would rather, bowling for the outside pins, that some pins I'm caring more about than others, I also think that sometimes there needs to be attention given to the students who really do as much as they can. And they sometimes feel maybe a little held back by students who don't really put their all in.
You mean because you have to spend class time kind of like extra class time helping those students understand a concept or something?
Well, not so much to understand a concept as asking 12 times for somebody to put the camera on.
Well, but I've even to that end, I've even had students who got frustrated with other students because I'm asked to explain the same something third, fourth, or fifth time, and those students who are paying attention are like, hey, I don't want to listen to this guy explaining the same thing over and over again, only because you're preoccupied with something else. So I think, you know, I mean, my point is that while being accommodating and being thoughtful about the circumstances of students is obviously extremely important, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that we are an academic institution, and as such, there is an expectation of involvement and academic standards that students have to meet. And just, I know it's kind of an unpopular point lately, but I'd like to make it nonetheless.
Yeah, I want to support Andrew's expression of the need for balance and responsibility. I mean, it's an art, not a science here, right? And the dynamics of any group really play out in real time, I feel. And I just want to also share that in terms of the frustration of some students with some of their colleagues, plays out also with the fact that almost everybody has very complicated lives. And we're not measuring who has it harder than the next person. But it's also it's a truth that people take varying degrees of responsibility and give varying amounts of attention, given sometimes horrific life circumstances, you know, deaths in families, 3 kids that are homesick, this and that. It's not my job to judge or to choose, you know, who gets an extra week to do the paper.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that it's a dilemma for us faculty who are really humane mostly and adaptable and trying to, you know, are true to the mission that everybody is coming from a different place. And that's really our mission as a college, right? To meet people where they are as best as possible and bring them over the finish line. I'm just sharing that I don't have an answer here, but I want to acknowledge that it's a dilemma for faculty, some of us.
But I'm confused why we're equating someone having their camera off with them not paying attention or completing an assignment or understanding a concept. I haven't.
Carol, the reason being, I want to echo what Geeta just said. In my experience, this is not science, but in my experience, the students who aren't on camera overwhelmingly are the students that are missing on many other cylinders in terms of their participation in class and their engagement.
Interesting point.
Papers in time, attendance, all kinds of things like that.
I can see both sides here. I'm just to keep track of time. Sorry, I'm going to be that person. We need to move on. We've got a couple of people who haven't got to share with their groups to discuss. So Rosemary, I see you have your hand up. You want to tell us a little bit about your group? And not
Yes,
to dismiss
definitely.
this conversation. It's a great
Definitely. Yes. Thank you so much. We divided it into 3 areas: the introduction area, the teaching and learning engagement, and a little bit about the assessment. In the introduction area, it was unanimous that we needed to connect with the students in a personal way. And Abby had a great way of putting it. She said that we need to share about ourselves first as the role models with humility and transparency, and just allay the fear and anxiety that many of the returning students have. So be a role model in terms of sharing about ourselves. John had a great way, Papadonis. He sets people up for success. And the way he does that is prior to their meeting, he gets the class list and puts together for each student, gives them a kind of a heads up directive. He's actually put together a science education folder, including the DOE standards. And this is a folder that the students will put all of their information in and carry with them to graduation. So I thought that was terrific. And as far as I'm concerned, I love to chat. So I love to get their phone numbers and give them a quick call and just have an informal chat with them. It was great, particularly during the pandemic, because I could find out what particular problems the students were having in terms of their own lives. So it also allows me to find out what their learning styles are and whether or not I need to set up anything, particularly special for them. In the teaching and learning, I think John was amazing. He said that all through the pandemic, he went into the school, he taught live in a classroom as well as Zoom. So he gave them many choices in terms of coming into class. And he used high technology, robotic cameras with wide angle and micro lenses to record with a lot of difficulty, I guess, his science experiments. So science is something that students have to have hands-on. So the pandemic has caused him to have to really reinvent lots of strategies in presenting. He also offers students the choice of being able to view the class because it's recorded. So at times when there's a conflict with another class being offered on that same day, as was mine this year. So he offered his students the opportunity to miss his class, but yet they had everything on the recording. I think there was one concern in terms of assessment. We try to give them choices so that a key assessment could be either one or two choices, depending on their interest level. Groups, students love to work in groups, and we do that. I do that by offering to do the key assessment as a project, and it's a process so that in breakout rooms, I am able to go in and give them more individualized instruction based on their levels of understanding and their facility with the lesson plans. Stephen, though, had a concern, and the concern is the digital divide. If we don't see in face-to-face classes coming back, what about those students that we're losing between the cracks that don't have access and they're using their phones or having to go to a restaurant to access the Wi-Fi? So he's very concerned about that, where things are going and how this digital divide is going to be resolved.
Great. Thanks, Rosemary. So many wonderful observations that we could definitely spend a lot of time unpacking on the digital divide, being a role model in the classroom. We've been taking notes on all this too. Also, I really liked your idea that you call your students on your phone. And that's just, I didn't get to participate in the breakout rooms, but the thing that I do that I think is the most engaging for my students that they love is I do individual conferences like 4 times a semester. I'll meet individually on Zoom with every single student to talk about their projects. And they love that more than the classes. And I also do my classes to that. So I've heard about John's science classes. I think your reputation precedes you on that one. Thanks. So we only got a couple of minutes left. I guess that we didn't book enough time for this share out. But there's 2 people who haven't had a chance to tell us about their groups, Geeta and Andrew. And I think I got a correction on your name, Andrew. Let me see if I can pronounce it. Is it Andrew Banishevitz?
All right, you got it. You must have been working with Tracy because Tracy pronounces my name excellently. So, Tracy, thank you for tutoring Brooks.
And take credit, Andrew. I don't know who it was.
Oh, it was
Okay.
Nelene. It was Nelene. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, there you go. But no worries, Brooks. I've had people that I had to threaten that we're not going to be friends any longer if they don't learn how to pronounce my name. So, but anyway, I'm just going to be very, very quick here. So my group was John Kuru, Maria, is it Mangual? I apologize myself this time if I mispronounce. Irina Galatskaya, Jeff Lockey, and Sandy Owen. And so there were 2 or 3 ideas, very positive ideas that came up that really resonated with me personally. So the first one was posing open-ended questions that are comfortable to students, and then taking, so that's sort of one item, and then kind of a closely related follow-on items is taking their thoughts and essentially building a bridge between their thoughts and sort of the content of the course or the content of the particular session. And sort of separately, but in a very related way, also perhaps offering training in structured social interactions for faculty, since it's probably not a more of a learned art than that some kind of a natural ability for how to foster interesting and productive group interactions. So so that might be something worth considering as well. So beyond that, I think there were a number of areas of concern that have been voiced that kind of we've heard here about different points. So the motivation and involvement and sort of interest level of some students. And personally, I do see that a lot. I mean, let's face it, how many students really want to learn statistics, right? Even though they come to business school where you would think numbers is kind of a central theme. But and then also the sort of some skepticism about the ability to truly meaningfully engage students via the electronic modality that is becoming more and more of a norm, and a fear that if we're going to be utilizing Zoom-like electronic means of delivering our content, that it's going to become really, progressively more difficult to sort of truly draw students into a meaningful interaction the way that it is possible in a physical classroom setting. So those were the key takeaways from the discussion in our session.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Some good stuff. And thanks for the suggestion for training on social interactions. That'd be nice to explore more. We are going to move into a second part in just a little bit where we do one more breakout room, and to have you sort of think about how can we make these ideas concrete? What are some strategies we can do to move some of this forward and not lose the thread on the conversation that we're having here? But before we get to that, I just want to give Geeta a chance if you want to share a little bit about what your group had discussed. I think you're the only one who didn't get a chance to. Yeah.
As valuable as I think our group discussion was, I would actually suggest we move into part 2, Brooks, unless my group feels silenced by that, just because I don't want to lose out what part 2 is all about.
Yes.
How does the group feel about it? Are we okay with that?
Yeah, I mean,
they say they're okay with it.
Okay, all right, that's good. Yeah, let's do that. And Geeta actually was really critical, and Rebecca too. I think we're both critical in helping to frame this part 2. We didn't have that in the initial design, and I think both Geeta and Rebecca and everyone who was a part of that faculty conversation that we had when we sort of were planning this day talked about the importance of having some kind of concrete steps that we take away. So we have a nice conversation. We brought up many great topics from the digital divide. There's even some other conversations happening in the chat that look pretty interesting. We talked a lot about video, things like that. So where do we go from here, I guess, is the question for the next breakout discussion. Where do we take this, basically? What are some concrete things we can do? Or like, do we want to have more conversations like this? Are there certain topics that we want to do in conversations? Are there additional trainings that we might need? What other ways can we help students? That's kind of the idea for this next breakout session. And we had talked about, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Geeta or Rebecca. Okay. So why don't I go ahead? I'll open the breakout rooms up. We're going to stay in the same rooms, and we'll have just 15 minutes this time to talk a little bit about what do we take away from this and what can we do with this. So I'll open the room so you should be able to join, and I'll assign the people who haven't. Okay, I think everybody's back now. Hopefully you all had enough time. Didn't feel like you were ripped out of the breakout room. I don't know. I tried to send some messages so that.
Yeah. I got into the wrong breakout room, Brooks, so.
Oh, I put you in the wrong one?
Yep.
But weren't you so interesting, Marianne?
It was really interesting, but I was just going to apologize for swooping in, but it's Brooks' fault.
That's my fault, yeah.
They didn't vote you out, did they, Marianne?
Oh, Marianne, it was a pleasure having you.
They kind of wondered why I was there.
Who is that person?
Well, I was just telling Mike when over the break, it's very stressful to manage this many people in a breakout room. I mean, a class with 20 you can do, but like 40, 50, it's not easy. But anyway, so we're a little bit behind schedule. We're about 5 minutes behind schedule. We are going to, at 2 o'clock, we're going to move into sort of an optional session where we do an overview of Canvas. So you're welcome to stay for that if you want. It's about a half an hour just to introduce Canvas to people and show some of the features. We have Paula Bramante on here, who's the e-learning director, I believe, of e-learning, and she's going to sort of walk us through that. So that's coming up soon. But we want to close out this first part in case people, need to jump off and can't attend the Canvas part. I just want to go around quickly and just sort of check in with each group and maybe get like your 1 or 2 kind of top suggestions that you talked about. And then if I could ask the facilitators to email me any other suggestions that came up in the group, I think that would be great. So Linda was actually just talking about one in her group. So I don't know if you want to reshare what you were talking about, Linda.
Sure. So one of the key ones that was identified, Joseph was the brainchild behind that one. And that was the acknowledgement that faculty, for the most part, know how to do the content. But what is not an area of expertise that we all agreed to was the aspect of instructional design. And that may be a way to help rally the groups around to continue to gain knowledge and to be part of a group.
That's a great suggestion. So you're saying maybe have a group that sort of talks a little bit about instructional design and some basic principles,
Yeah, instructional design and also support in actually integrating some of these concepts into the courses from the bottom up. So I think it would be very helpful for faculty members to develop those skills, but also to have a support network for improving the quality of the courses and the delivery of those courses to the students.
Yeah, excellent suggestion. And we have some experts on here. I'm looking at Paula and Daniel, Michael Maripodi. So I think that should be something that we could definitely talk more about. I don't want to put more work on people's plates, but I think we have some expertise, and that's something we might be able to at least start some conversations around. So great suggestion. Let's go through some of the other groups and see what other suggestions came up. Does anybody else want to share what their group discussed?
We'd like to share group 8. We were quiet before. I don't know, James, did you take the notes and do you want to share, or else I can do it?
Well, I'll just share the point that we actually landed on the same thing as the previous group, that having a small working group kind of focused in these strategies would be really helpful. That was an ongoing critical friends group, I think Liba had given us the term. But Geeta, if you'd like to speak to what we talked about, that would be.
Actually, I'm going to call on Liba to explain the critical friends terminology. And one other thing I wanted to add was that one member of our group suggested that we develop visuals to create some kind of depository for different protocols and strategies. And it would be helpful if that was in part visual for those of us who are visuals. And then Liba, would you explain to us what you explained to the group?
Certainly, Gita. So the National School Reform Faculty, the name came to me, of course, after the group ended. They developed this program in the 90s around critical friend group. And the idea was that you would use it in the pretty much K through 12 setting to make your practice more reflective. And so they had a whole training that you went through in terms of how to be a critical friends coach. And but the way my small group was structured was we had the same group of people over multiple disciplines, and we met weekly. And every week somebody presented a case or dilemma that they were struggling with, and we would give them ideas for strategies. And so it was really a way to delve into our toolkits and to revisit some of those best practices. And then the next week, that person would pretty much reflect back or report out how things went to the group, and we would hear another new case. So it was all classroom based, and it allowed us to implement strategies immediately. And it was a little bit of microdosing. So we were more likely to use things immediately than you often are when you go to a professional development type of setting and you get the trying to drink from the fire hydrant pretty much.
I love that. Critical Friends group. That's cool.
That's really good.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I might email you, learn a little bit more about that, because I think that's a great idea. And I think people might be interested in joining group. Would that be like a weekly or a monthly or?
You know, for us, we had built planning time into our teachers, additional planning time into our teachers' weekly schedule specifically for that. But I think it would probably make sense to do more either monthly or maybe bi-weekly. You know, I think every week might be a little overwhelming.
Yeah, right. Great. Well, thanks, Leva. I might be reaching out to you to learn a little bit more about that. Thanks for offering. It's a good idea.
To share.
Perfect. Does anybody else want to share what their group discussed?
I would like to I'll just piggyback on that, you know, we had talked a lot about, everybody here has great skill sets that can be shared amongst one another. For example, Masame was sharing about group dynamics and the ways that has informed her teaching practice. And I think I really like the idea of critical friends groups being a way to share that. But we also just talked about identifying a format, a common format that can be used also for sharing resources. And whether that's a chat format, a Zoom chat was one that was mentioned, or using a MyCC discussion forum that faculty have access to, or whether that's something in Canvas that can be operated is along those lines. Thanks.
That's a great suggestion. Thanks, Paul. And I do want to go to Barbara and then John, but just 1 second.
Yeah.
We're a little bit over time, so we're going to start the Canvas demo a little bit later, like maybe 2:05 or 2:07, if that's okay. But I think these are great suggestions. And if we don't get to something that you really think is important, definitely email it to me. Barbara, do you want to share?
Yeah, really quick. So there was a great suggestion made about disseminating either a letter, a paper of these best practices to the entire faculty. So not so much that people would have to go back and listen to a 3-hour, meeting that we have had, but to condense the information and share it. And it was also brought up that that we put it in categories, that we have a receptacle for resources, maybe in MyCC, but then very specific categories. So whether we're talking about engaging online, engaging with, particular types of content or whatever it might be, or issues of diversity, that we have, there's a way to get to it quickly and make the information more usable versus just volumes of information. And the other thing that people have alluded to is like sharing best practices, making sure we create space for faculty to come and, kind of do a show and tell sort of thing.
You and I had
show
talked
us what they've been up to and the way that they've implemented certain things.
All right, can everybody mute themselves, please? I missed the last part of that. What was that? Sorry.
Just the best practices, that we have a way to highlight faculty and what they're doing that, has been successful, or maybe it's about a dilemma that they haven't, similar to the critical friend circle that you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Nidhi had also mentioned about, creating intimate circles within schools so that there are opportunities there to, in a safe space, feel like you can talk about certain challenges and ideas about engagement.
Yeah, I love that suggestion. And definitely the repository too. That's something me and Mike talked a little bit about, was ways to build a repository. I know Canvas does have some group capabilities like that. So hopefully, and even MyCC has some places where we could build a repository and I think access it. So,
but if we can create a paper or a letter, as Needy was mentioning, that we then send out to the entire faculty, even though they weren't here, they will get the essence of what was going on.
Yeah, good suggestion. I put that down. So yeah, I'll work on that. Great. John, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I'm going to hijack the conversation. And
okay. We only got like 2 minutes.
Yep, and I'll make it fast.
Okay.
It's a question to all of you. And I have grave concerns about whether or not we're ever going to come back onto that campus. Joe Miglio will tell you last Saturday in my classroom of 20 registered students, 3 sat in front of me live in the science lab classroom. It started with out of the 20, about 10, and then it's dwindled down to 3. And I have grave concerns as to the direction that the administration of the college, are they looking at this moving forward? Have there been conversations about that campus is empty? When I go in on Saturday, I'm the only human being teaching in a classroom. And I have concerns about that. And I'd like to know, is this the future? All the conversations we've had today have been best practices and sharing on how to teach either online or via Zoom. I haven't heard anyone say, are we coming back? And I think that's a core question that's going to determine how I plan the rest of my future at Cambridge College as a faculty member. And I'll leave that with all of you.
Great comments, like dropping a grenade in the middle of this.
Well, it's what the elephant in the room that no one has asked. Are we coming back? What's the plan?
It's a good point. I mean, that might be a topic of conversation for like a roundtable with faculty, you know, just to sort of get people's impressions.
So John, the School of Management has stated that they're definitely coming back. I teach an on-campus class on Mondays, and there are about 3 other classes. But other than that, yes, the campus is deserted. But we've been told in the spring that the only options are fully in class or fully online. The remote classes are not going to happen. I mean, that's the plan for now. It might change.
Yeah.
There will be remote classes, Marianne.
School of Management.
Right, but perhaps not for the School of Management. But all
I'm
the
just
other
talking
schools,
about the School of Management, right?
Yeah, everyone else will have that option, doing fully remote, fully online, or fully in seat.
Yeah. My question is: Are students going to ever want to come back? And do we have enough data to come to a conclusion? And has the college leadership team, you know, addressed this? And do they have a forward-thinking plan? Anyway, that's just my question.
Yeah, it's a good point. I can't really address it right now, but I do think it's important for us to really think about that strategically, you know, and make sure we make the best choice for the college and the students. So I'll bring that topic up for conversation and see if there's a way that faculty could be engaged somehow in that conversation. So I appreciate the point. It's a good one. So we just have like a minute or 2 left. I just want to just quick check and see if Chris or Rosemary or Rebecca want to share anything that you discussed in your group.
Brooks, I'd like to just reaffirm what Barbara said about making the information available to all faculty. One of the first things that came up in our discussion was that the timing from 12 to 2 really isn't good for part-time faculty, and that we're missing literally hundreds of people who really need to hear what we're doing, rather than the 40, you know, mostly full-time people who have quite a good background on all of this. Another comment was, when we do another session, could we have a section where we talk about the tools of the particular area and be very specific about what those are? A couple of sites were mentioned. today, but I don't have them written down, and the specificity would be a big help to a lot of us.
Yeah, great suggestions. Yeah, I think those are both excellent. And the tools, for sure, that's a good idea. We should start gathering some of these tools in some place. But the time is a great point. I mean, that's something that I've struggled with too, because, faculty really are much better for like 5, 6 o'clock, after work type thing. So, I mean, Tracy and Mike and Deans, maybe we should talk a little bit about that for the academic calendar, or even for the spring, if it's possible to change the timing of this for the spring. So just real quickly, sorry, Paula, I know I keep pushing you off. I'm so sorry. Do Rebecca or
No, I don't have anything else to say.
Great.
John presented his question for our group. Thank you, Brooks.
Thanks, Rosemary. Rebecca, you want to, any last words?
Thank you to John for bringing up the question, because that came up in our group as well. So I'm glad to hear that question. I'll also just mention that my group talked about the need to learn more about each other, not necessarily from each other, although that definitely is a need, but the need to learn more about each other. And we mentioned the acquisition of NEIB and the formation of CC Global, and the real lack of just understanding about one another's models and personalities and all the other pieces that we're just kind of missing that part. We kind of glossed over it. And so we expressed a real need to just get to know one another by school, by program, by personality, in all the ways, including the teaching and learning model, so that people were aware of what that was. So just a real need for learning is what came up with my group.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. It's a pretty big gap. I mean, I'm fortunate to interact with a lot of different people, a lot of different schools, and I know how much great work is happening at CC Global, but also in some of these small programs like John's science program we talked a little bit about today. Dan is on the line. His ABA program is doing amazing work. The school nursing program is doing really good work. So I think there's a lot of places where we could just learn more about what good work is being done at the school. So I think that was a great thought to round this out. So I want to just sort of shift gears. I really appreciate all of you coming and being a part of this conversation. I hope that it was useful and valuable to you. I've taken a lot of notes. Tracy's probably taken some notes too. We're going to try to put all this together. I'll definitely send out like a summary, like I think that was suggested for faculty, of the essence of the conversation, if we can capture it. And then think about ways that we can move forward with some of those suggestions, like potentially small groups, space to get to know each other a little bit more. A lot of good practices there. So I really appreciate everybody coming out.